I took the night security job at St. Catherine's Medical Center because the pay was decent and I needed something to cover my student loans while I figured out what to do with my life. 3 months in, and I was still telling myself it was temporary. The hospital was built in 1952. All those long corridors and flickering fluorescent lights you'd expect from a place that's been retrofitted a dozen times, but never quite modernized. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and most nights I'd just walk the rounds, check the doors, maybe catch a doctor or nurse working late. It was a Tuesday when I first saw her. I was doing my 2 a.m. patrol through the 4th floor, the old orthopedic wing that they'd mostly shut down after the new surgical center opened. The hallway lights were dimmed for the night, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow. I heard footsteps behind me, quick and purposeful, and when I turned around, there was a nurse in old-style scrubs, the kind with the actual white dress and cap that nobody wears anymore. "Excuse me," she said, slightly out of breath. "I need help with a patient in 447. He's coding and I can't find anyone." My radio crackled on my belt. Something felt off immediately. Room 447 hadn't been used in over a year. But she looked so urgent, so real, that I followed her. She walked fast, almost too fast, and I had to jog to keep up. When we got to 447, she pushed the door open and gestured inside. The room was completely empty. No bed, no equipment, just bare walls and a window with the blinds drawn. I turned to ask her what was going on, but the hallway was empty. She was just gone. No sound of footsteps, no doors closing. Nothing. I radioed down to the main desk, asked if any nurses were working the 4th floor. "Negative," came the response. "That wing's been closed since 9 p.m. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was tired. Maybe she ducked into another room. But my hands were shaking when I signed out that morning. The next week, it happened again. Same nurse, same urgent request. This time she wanted help in room 423. I followed her again, I don't know why, and got the same result. Empty room. She vanished. I started asking the day staff about her, describing what she looked like: petite, dark hair, in a bun, maybe 40 years old, with these really intense brown eyes. That's when Sarah, one of the older RNs, went pale. "What did you just say?" I repeated the description. "Come with me," she said, and led me down to the administrative offices. She pulled out an old staff directory from 2018, flipped through it, and showed me a photo. My stomach dropped. It was her. Exactly her. "That's Rachel Simmons," Sarah said quietly. "She died here 5 years ago. Massive heart attack during her shift. She was trying to get help for a patient when it happened. They found her in the 4th floor hallway." I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's not possible. I talked to her twice." Sarah just looked at me with this sad, knowing expression. "You're not the first. 3 other security guards reported seeing her before you. They all quit within a month. I should have quit right then. But I had bills, and honestly, part of me didn't believe it. Maybe it was some elaborate prank. Maybe I was having some kind of stress-induced hallucination. I kept working, but I started avoiding the 4th floor when I could, rerouting my patrols, taking extra time on the other levels. Then last week, she appeared right in front of me on the second floor. I was checking the emergency exits near the ICU when I turned around and she was there, closer than she'd ever been before. Close enough that I could see her name tag, R. Simmons. "Please," she said, and her voice cracked. "Please help him. Room 447. He's dying and no one will come." "Rachel," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "There's no one in that room. There hasn't been for years." Her eyes widened. For a moment she looked confused, lost. Then her expression changed to something like horror, like she was realizing something terrible. "How long?" she whispered. "How long have I been here?" I couldn't speak. My throat had completely closed up. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. "I can't remember finishing my shift. I can't remember going home. I just remember the patient needed help, and I was running, and then..." She started to fade. Not like walking away, actually becoming transparent like smoke dissipating. The last thing I heard was her voice, very small and distant. "Tell them I'm sorry I never made it home." I put in my 2 weeks' notice the next morning. They're trying to convince me to stay, offering me more money, different shifts. But I can't. Because now when I walk past any hallway in that hospital, I wonder how many other people are still trying to finish their shifts. Still trying to save patients who are long gone, not knowing that they never made it home either. I've got 1 more week left, 6 more nights. I just have to keep my head down and get through it. But last night during my rounds, I heard footsteps behind me on the 3rd floor. Quick and purposeful, I didn't turn around. I just kept walking. But I heard the voice anyway, urgent and desperate. "Excuse me, I need help with a patient. I'm not going back tonight. I don't care about the money anymore." I've been working as a morgue attendant at County General for 7 years, and I'm not the type of guy who spooks easily. Dead bodies are just bodies. Vessels that used to hold people. That's what I told myself anyway. The job paid well for night work, the hours were quiet, and I could study for my nursing degree during the downtime. It was perfect, really, until 3 weeks ago when they installed the new security cameras. The morgue is in the basement, naturally. There's a main door that requires a key card, then a corridor, then the cold storage room where we keep the deceased. Only 4 people have keycard access. Me, Dr. Patterson, the pathologist, Janet from day shift, and hospital security. The cards log every entry. That becomes important later. They installed the cameras on a Monday. High definition, night vision, the whole 9 yards. Part of some hospital-wide security upgrade after there were thefts in the pharmacy. I didn't think much of it. What were they going to catch on camera down here? Me eating sandwiches and reading textbooks? The first incident happened that Thursday. I came in at 11 p.m. for my shift, did my usual walkthrough. We had 5 bodies in storage, 3 from the day shift and 2 that had come in that evening. I logged them all. Positions, toe tag numbers, everything by the book. At 3:15 a.m., I heard the main door beep. That electronic sound it makes when someone uses a key card. I looked up from my anatomy textbook, confused. Nobody else should be here. I got up and checked the corridor. Empty. The door was closed. I figured it must have been some electronic glitch. These doors do that sometimes, random beeps and clicks as the mechanisms settle. I went back to the office, marked it down in my log anyway, just to cover myself. At 7 a.m., when Janet came in for day shift, she asked me something that made my skin prickle. "Did you move anyone last night?" "No," I said. "Why?" She had this weird look on her face. "The body in drawer 7. The positioning is different. Arms are crossed over the chest. I know they weren't like that yesterday because I was the one who brought him down." I checked the logs. No one had accessed any of the drawers. Janet and I pulled him out together. She was right. The body's arms were crossed, peaceful-like, as if someone had arranged him for viewing. But that made no sense. He'd been dead for 3 days, rigor mortis long gone, but nobody had any reason to move him. We were just storing him until his family arranged transport to a funeral home upstate. I mentioned the door beeping at 3:15. Janet pulled up the security logs on the computer. There it was. Door access at 3:14 a.m. But no key card was recorded, just an unexplained entry. "Probably a system bug," Janet said, but she didn't sound convinced. I tried to forget about it, but the next night, same thing. 3:15 a.m. Exactly, door beep. I was ready this time. I stood up immediately and watched the door. Nothing. It didn't open. But I heard something else, a sound coming from the cold storage room. A soft sliding sound, like metal on metal. My heart was hammering, but I forced myself to check. I opened the cold storage door. All the drawers were closed. Everything looked normal. But I had this overwhelming feeling that something was off. I pulled out drawers randomly, checking bodies. They all looked fine, in the same positions I'd left them. Then I got to drawer 3. The woman inside, car accident victim, deceased for 2 days, was on her side, curled up in a fetal position. My hands went numb. I knew for a fact she'd been on her back, arms at her sides. I'd logged her position myself. But here she was, turned over, knees drawn up like she was sleeping. The temperature in that room is kept at 37 degrees. Bodies don't move themselves. I called security. They sent Mike down, big guy, former Marine, not easily rattled. I showed him the body, showed him my logs. He pulled up the security footage on his phone, the feed from the new cameras. We watched it together. At 3:14:58 a.m., the corridor was empty. At 3:15 a.m., the morgue door was still closed. But at 3:14 a.m., the door opened, just swung inward, smooth and slow. The corridor remained empty. Nobody walked through. But the door stayed open for exactly 47 seconds, then closed again. Mike's face had gone gray. "That's not possible," he kept saying. "The system doesn't malfunction like that." "Check the storage room camera," I said. He pulled it up. For about 10 seconds, we watched the normal feed of the closed drawers. Then at 3:15:20 a.m., drawer 3 started to slide open. Slowly. Just a few inches. Not enough to trigger any alarms, but enough. The camera angle couldn't quite see inside the drawer, but we watched it stay open for 30 seconds, then slide closed again. Neither of us said anything for a long minute. "I'll report the camera malfunction," Mike finally said, but his voice was shaking. "It's happened every night since then." 3:15 a.m., like clockwork. The door opens. Something enters. Bodies move. The cameras show everything except what's actually doing it. Dr. Patterson thinks we're pulling a prank. Janet transferred to day shift permanently. They brought in a tech to check the cameras. He found nothing wrong. Last night was the worst. I was so exhausted I'd started to doze off around 3 a.m., but my phone alarm woke me at 3:14. I positioned myself in the corridor with a clear view of both the door and the camera. I wanted to see it happen in real time, not just on playback. At 3:15, the door beeped, started to open. The camera's red recording light was steady. I was standing 5 feet away, staring directly at that doorway. The door opened. I saw nothing, just empty air. But I felt something pass by me, a coldness that went beyond temperature, a pressure in the air, like the feeling you get before a thunderstorm. I stood there frozen as the cold storage room door opened next. I heard the drawers sliding. Multiple drawers this time. The sounds went on for 2 full minutes. When it stopped, everything went still again. The doors closed. I checked the drawers this morning before Janet came in. All 6 bodies had been moved, repositioned, some with arms crossed, some turned on their sides, one sitting partially upright, supported by the drawer's headrest. I'm writing this from my apartment. I called in sick for the first time in 7 years. I watched the security footage from last night one more time before I left. At 3:47 a.m., just for a fraction of a second, the camera glitched. In that glitch, in that one corrupted frame, I saw something in the corridor. Multiple somethings. Shapes. Human-shaped but wrong somehow. Standing in the hallway facing the camera. The image was distorted, pixelated, but I counted at least 7 of them. Then the next frame was clear again, showing an empty corridor. I've started looking up the history of the building. County General was built on the site of the old Mercy Hospital, which burned down in 1952. The fire started at 3:15 a.m. 47 people died, most of them patients who couldn't evacuate. They never found all the bodies. My shift starts in 3 hours. I don't know if I'm going back. The first time it happened, I thought someone was messing with me. I'm a facilities manager at Riverside Medical Center. Basically, I'm the guy who keeps the building running. Electrical issues, plumbing, HVAC, you name it. I've been here 4 years, and I know every inch of this place. The surgery ward is on the 3rd floor, 6 operating rooms, plus a recovery area and prep stations. State-of-the-art, renovated just 18 months ago. It was a Sunday, around 6 p.m. Most of the surgical staff had gone home. They don't schedule procedures on Sunday evenings unless it's an emergency. I was walking past OR4, checking on a temperature inconsistency someone had reported, when the hallway light directly above me flickered. Not unusual. Even new ballasts can act up. But then the intercom crackled to life. Scalpel ready. A woman's voice. Calm. Professional. The kind of voice you'd hear during an actual surgery. I stopped walking. The intercom system in the surgical wing is isolated. It only works when someone manually activates it from inside an OR or from the central nursing station. I looked around. The nursing station was dark, unmanned. All the OR doors were closed, their occupancy lights showing red, meaning unoccupied. I checked OR4. Empty. Equipment covered, lights off. I tested the intercom from inside. Nothing seemed wrong with it. I walked back out into the hallway, wrote it off as some weird electrical feedback. These things happen in hospitals with all the electronic equipment running constantly, but it happened again 2 days later. Same spot in the hallway, right between OR4 and OR5. Same flickering light. Same voice. "Scalpel ready." This time I was with Marcus, one of our electricians. He heard it too. We looked at each other and I could see he was just as confused as I was. We spent an hour checking the intercom system, the wiring, everything. Found nothing wrong. Marcus suggested maybe it was picking up interference from somewhere. Some kind of radio bleed through. "Except," he said, scratching his head, "hospital intercoms are closed systems. They don't work like that." I started documenting every time it happened. Always the same location in the hallway, always between 6 and 7 p.m., always the same phrase. The light would flicker for exactly 3 seconds, then the voice would come through. After 2 weeks, I had logged 11 incidents. Always when I was walking past that specific section of hallway. I mentioned it to Karen, the surgical unit manager. She gave me this look. Not quite concerned, not quite dismissive. "That's interesting," she said carefully. "Do me a favor, don't mention this to the surgical staff. They're superstitious enough as it is." "Why?" I asked. "Has something happened here before?" She hesitated, then pulled me into her office and closed the door. 5 years ago, before the renovation, we had an incident in OR4. A surgeon, Dr. Patricia Chen, she was performing a routine appendectomy when she had a massive stroke. Collapsed during the procedure. She died before they could even get her down to the ER. My mouth went dry. "What time did it happen?" "Around 6:30 p.m. It was a Sunday." I felt cold. "What were her last words?" Karen looked uncomfortable. "According to the nurses who were there, she just asked for a scalpel. The nurse said, 'Scalpel ready,' handed it to her, and she collapsed immediately." I started avoiding that hallway. I'd take the long way around to access the surgical wing, even though it added 10 minutes to my rounds. But you can't avoid every hallway in a hospital forever. Last week I got called up to surgery for an emergency. Someone had reported a gas smell in OR2. Potential leak, all hands on deck situation. I had to walk past that section of hallway. It was 6:20 p.m. The light flickered. My steps faltered, but I kept walking, faster now, almost jogging. The intercom crackled, "Scalpel ready." But this time, something else happened. The door to OR4 clicked. Not opened. Just the sound of the electronic lock disengaging. I stopped, staring at it. The occupancy light was still red. The door remained closed. But I heard something from inside the room. Muffled sounds. Voices. The steady beeping of monitors. I stood there in that hallway, frozen, listening to the sounds of a surgery taking place in an empty operating room. The rational part of my brain was screaming at me to walk away, to check OR2 like I was supposed to do my job, to ignore what was happening. But I couldn't. I reached for the door handle. It was cold, colder than it should have been. I pushed it open. The OR was empty, dark, silent. No equipment running, no voices, no sounds at all. But the temperature was wrong. It was freezing in there. My breath forming clouds. And there was a smell, antiseptic, yes, but underneath that, something else, something metallic. Blood. On the operating table, there was a dark stain. It hadn't been there that morning. I'd walked through during my AM rounds and everything had been clean. I turned on the lights. The stain was reddish brown, still slightly damp, fresh. I called security. They came up with Karen. We all stood there looking at the stain. Karen touched it with a gloved finger, rubbed it between her thumb and forefinger. "It's blood," she said quietly. "That's impossible," security said. "This room hasn't been used in 3 days. It was cleaned and locked." We checked the logs. He was right. No one had accessed OR4 since Thursday. It was now Sunday evening. But there was fresh blood on the operating table. They shut down the OR, called in a cleaning crew, took samples for testing. The lab results came back inconclusive. Human blood, but degraded in a way that made it impossible to type or match. The head of pathology said it looked old, despite being visibly fresh. He couldn't explain it. I've been walking past that hallway every day since. I have to. It's my job. Every time. The light flickers. Every time I hear the voice, "Scalpel ready." Sometimes the door to OR4 clicks. Sometimes I hear sounds from inside. Yesterday, something new happened. The voice came through the intercom, but this time it was different. Instead of "Scalpel ready," it said something else. It said my name. David. Just that. Just my name. In that same calm, professional voice. I was alone in the hallway. The light flickered above me. I felt something behind me, a presence close enough that I could feel cold breath on the back of my neck. I didn't turn around. I just walked. Kept walking until I was out of the surgical wing entirely, down the stairs, out into the parking lot. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel. I'm writing this from home. I called in sick today for the first time in 4 years, but I know I have to go back tomorrow. It's my job. The hospital needs me. And I think somehow, something in OR4 needs me too. The thing that scares me most isn't the voice or the flickering lights or the blood. It's the medical records I found this afternoon. I couldn't help myself. I looked up Dr. Patricia Chen. I found her file, read through her history. She'd been married, had 2 kids, was known as an excellent surgeon, well-liked, respected. And at the bottom of her file, there was a note from the hospital administrator, a note about her final wishes. She'd filled out one of those advanced directive forms, the kind that says what you want done if something happens to you at work. Dr. Chen had requested that if she ever died at the hospital, she wanted to donate her organs. She wanted to save lives, even in death. But because of the way she died, the sudden stroke, the complications, they couldn't use any of her organs. She'd wanted to help one more patient, and they couldn't let her. Tomorrow I go back to work. I'll have to walk past OR4 again. The light will flicker. The intercom will crackle. And I'm terrified of what the voice will say next. Because tonight I had a dream. I was lying on an operating table in OR4, staring up at the lights. Dr. Chen was standing over me, older than in her pictures, her face gray and drawn. She was holding a scalpel. "Scalpel ready," she said. But in the dream, it was my voice saying it. Then she leaned close and whispered, "Let me finish."